Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse. We are in the early days of October, and that means there are some different birds flowing through the area. So, we'll give you an update on some of the things you should look for in your backyard and things that you can look forward to as the season goes on. As always, we love to know who's on. If you're on, you can just say hi in the comments, or if you have any questions, you can throw those in there too. And we love to know what kind of things you're seeing. So, especially as it's getting a little bit cooler in general, although it's going to be a really hot week here in Rochester at least. But as the evenings start to cool, especially, we'll start to see maybe more activity at feeders and things like that. So we always love to know what kind of things you guys are seeing. So let's get started on the update here. First, I've been hearing Carolina wrens singing like crazy in my backyard. There was one just singing and singing and singing its heart out this morning. So even though the birds are migrating through, it's not mating season or anything like that, you might still hear birds calling like the Carolina wren, who are very, very vocal. They'll be here all winter long coming to feeders. You might hear things like cardinals singing and practicing their songs. So the birds are still, some of them are still singing, even though we're not in mating season. And there are some birds that are still flowing through that are on their way south. I was out walking around the river yesterday, saw a bunch of great egret. They're still around. So if you're by any kind of waterways where you typically see things like great blue heron or green heron, keep an eye out for the great egret, because there are still quite a few of them hanging around also. Hummingbirds. People are still reporting some hummingbirds. Orioles seem to be really gone for the season. Haven't heard many reports of them over the past 2-ish weeks or so, but hummingbirds here and there people are still reporting, and there'll be scattered reports of them throughout the month. But in general, if you haven't seen hummingbirds in the past couple weeks, it's probably safe to take your feeders down, especially if you have blooming plants and things like that, nectar producing blooming plants in your yard that the hummingbirds can drink from. It's probably safe to take your feeders down, but play it by ear. If you've been seeing a little bit of activity here and there, I would keep the feeder up, because people do have scattered reports throughout October. So a little bit of hummingbird activity, but in general, they are on their way back down south to Mexico and Central America. Some things to look out for, though, at your feeders in October: sparrows. There's a lot of the sparrow activity. We'll start to see dark-eyed juncos coming back to the area. In general, we don't have these in the spring and summer months, but you can find them all winter long here, especially underneath feeders. These are these gray birds here with the white belly and the little pink bill. So they'll be making their way back here for the winter. This is south for them. They go further up north to breed in the spring, and they're on their way back. So keep an eye out for those. They'll be back soon. And we'll start to get our first reports this month of American tree sparrow, another winter bird coming back to the area. So keep an eye out for them under your feeders. They've got that chestnut cap on the top of their head. They're larger than a chipping sparrow, which also has that kind of chestnut cap on the top of their head. And then the stripe that goes through their eye is not going to be black like a chipping sparrow, but it's brown. And they also have what's called a bicolored bill, where the top is black and the bottom is yellow. So those are some different ways you can identify them. But they'll be on their way back this month as well. Swamp sparrow, too, especially if you're by water, if you're by a marsh or a pond, anything with cattails. Keep an eye out for swamp sparrow. They have that really grayish colored face. So they'll be around. And sometimes these sparrows form these bigger mixed flocks too, where you might see a whole bunch of different species all together at once. Field sparrow are still around. Like their name suggests, they like tall grasses, fields, meadows. So they can be quite vocal also, but they're still hanging around, and they're going further south in general for the winter. And white-crowned sparrow, this is one you're pretty likely to see at your feeders if you keep your feeders full. They are fairly large, so you tend to see them on the ground. But if you have a platform feeder or something with a lot of perching room, you might get them at your feeder also. They'll eat sunflower seeds and millet and safflower, and they're quite large. They're overall very gray, and then they've got that white, black and white striping on the top of their head. So keep an eye out for them because they're going to be flowing through, as well as white-throated sparrow. And usually if you see one, you're likely to see the other in general. White-throated sparrow have that white patch on their throat, and they've got the little yellow patch right between their eye and their bill. So both of these, the white-throated sparrow and the white-crowned sparrow, are pretty common in backyards. So keep your eye out for those. And then song sparrow too. Song sparrow, you might not normally get them in your backyard, but now when they're migrating through, every once in a while you'll see them in the winter here, but they're more common in the spring and summer. So they're flowing through the area in some bigger numbers right now. So keep an eye out for song sparrow. And then finally fox sparrow, which are quite a bit larger. So you're going to see these guys usually on the ground. They are very reddish in coloration. So they're kind of like an orangish red, and then they've got a lot of gray on their face, and they're quite large too, and they've got kind of a pot belly type of look. So I've seen a couple of these guys in my yard in general, not this year yet, but so not a super common backyard bird, but you might see any of these passing through this time of the year. So keep an eye out for sparrows. It's definitely sparrow time. And hopefully we'll be getting reports of evening grosbeaks again this year. And these guys come to feeders. They're in the same family as cardinals. They've got that big bill like the cardinals do. You can kind of see that family resemblance. So they'll come to the same kind of feeders that cardinals will. So anything that's open, like a platform or a tray or a hopper feeder, or possibly even tube feeders if the perches are large enough. And they like sunflower seeds. They like striped sunflower, sunflower hearts, safflower. Any of those are great for evening grosbeaks, which tend to be a winter bird here. So we'll keep you updated if there's any sightings of evening grosbeaks, of pine grosbeaks, of crossbills, anything like that. So we will keep you updated as the season goes on. Warblers are kind of on their way out, although you guys have sent in a couple pictures of some warblers as of late. But what's kind of going to take their place, being about the same size and shapes and kind of habits as far as bouncing around in the trees and shrubs, are the kinglets. And we have the ruby crown kinglet and the golden crown kinglet. And so both of these will be more common this month also. It can be hard to identify them sometimes if they don't have that coloration flared out, especially the ruby crown kinglet. It's kind of nondescript. It's just kind of an olive color, and it has not a full eye ring. It has what's called a partial eye ring. It almost looks like two parentheses surrounding its eye. Has some yellowish coloration on its wing. They'll be around more, as well as the golden crown kinglet. So keep an eye out for them. And then wrens. I mentioned Carolina wren earlier. And in the spring and summer, we've got Carolina wren, the house wrens. We've got marsh wrens. And in the winter months, we get what are called winter wrens. And so these guys will start to flow into the area too. They're quite small, but they've got that wren posture with that round body and that tail that sticks up in the air. So keep an eye out for them too, especially if you've got brush piles or under your shrubs and things in your yard. You might just happen upon some winter wren. The thrushes, hermit thrush, they will be around also. They're in the same family as the robins and the bluebirds, and they've got kind of dark speckles on their breast, and they've got what's called a chestnut colored tail. So if you see their whole top of their body is pretty brown, but then if you look at their tail, it's more of a reddish color. So that's one good way to identify the hermit thrush, and they'll be flowing into. And if you see geese flying in formation in the skies, most likely they're going to be the Canada goose. But there's also snow geese that will pass through, and they're all white with the black tips on their wings. So keep an eye out for snow geese. You might see them also. As we get towards the end of October, so towards the end of the month, we'll start to see other birds start to flow in, like short-eared owls. They are a real big hit for people to go look for in the winter months around fields. They'll fly around dusk, and they'll hunt, and they make these barking sounds, so they're pretty cool to go look for. So short-eared owls will be making their way back here later on in the month. Same as shrikes. We have what's called the northern shrike, and they will start to be seen later on this month. And some of the more northern birds of prey, like the rough-legged hawk, will be coming back down this way towards the end of the month. You guys have been out there birding and sending in some photos. So here's some of your photos you guys have submitted. You can always submit photos to our Facebook or Instagram, or you can email them over to us at info@thebirdhouseny.com. This is a picture of a Swainson's thrush. So just showed a picture of a hermit thrush. This is what's called a Swainson's thrush that Mark J took over at the Erie Canal. And the Swainson's thrush is more of an olive color than, say, the hermit thrush. So it can be hard to identify, kind of hard to differentiate them sometimes. But if you look at the hermit thrush, they're very brown, and that circle around their eye, which is called an eye ring, on the hermit thrush is quite white, where on the Swainson's thrush, it's more of a yellowish color. They call it a buffy color. So the Swainson's thrush is more of an overall greenish, olivish color. So really neat sighting there from Mark J. He also sent in photos of this bald eagle at Irondequoit Bay and a yellow-rumped warbler. So still some warbler activity. You can see how they get their name from this photo. Yellow-rumped warblers are sometimes also known as butterbutts, they call them. So you can see that bright yellow patch on their rumps. So that's a yellow-rumped warbler. And this is a fun photo sent in by Mark again. He says, not sure what the hawk was doing, but it was entertaining. Kept playing with a stick, maybe a juvenile. So you can see it's got that stick in its bill. And it looks like it could be a juvenile. It looks like its tail has some striping on it. It's not fully all red. So really cool photo there showing some red-tailed hawk behavior. And here's another red-tailed hawk. This one also has some striping on its tail, and this photo was taken over at Erie Canal Lock 32 area. Another photo by Mark. And also in that same spot, it looks like, are some bald eagle. And here's a couple photos of that bald eagle, and you can see those huge talons on these photos. Really, really cool if you see it up close. Those amazingly giant talons of the bald eagle. Here's another picture in the same area over by Lock 32 of a belted kingfisher female. And this is another warbler picture. This one's sent in by Bob, who says Blackburnian warbler, I believe. And I concur. I think it is. Sometimes the warblers can be hard to identify in the fall because they are not as brightly colored as they are in the spring. And then here's another photo, another series of photos sent in by Bob, who says, more Tennessee warblers. I had 4 or 5 around feeding this morning. So some other warbler activity. So thank you guys for sending in your photos. It's always fun to see what kind of things you guys are seeing around. Some of you guys have comments here as well. King Joffrey says song sparrow's call is enigmatic. Yes, it's they can be pretty fun to listen to. Let's see, where's the song sparrow? Here it is. Oh, it looks like it's singing right there. They are known to sing and sing and sing over and over and over again, which is pretty fun to listen to. They're more silent now that it's the fall, but you still might come across them singing on a nice day if it's nice and sunny out. Stephanie is on, and she says, good morning. She says, I'm happy to report far fewer starlings this week. That is awesome. Yeah, one thing you can do if you have starlings that are overtaking your feeders is switch the seed out with safflower. The starlings don't really like that, but yeah, the starlings can form really, really big flocks, and they can go through a lot of birdseed, that is for sure. Duster is on and says, good morning. Good morning, Duster. And she's got some comments on the different birds, and she says they look tiny. I think probably talking about that winter wren, which is very, very small. Here it is right here. They are pretty small. Stephanie says, I've never seen an owl in the wild. What are good types of places to look for them? So that's a really good question, and it varies on the season. If you're looking for short-eared owl, as we get into the winter months, wide open fields are great places. Owl Woods out at Braddock Bay is a great place during migration, as far as spring migration in March. End of March through mid-April or so. They're known to have a lot of saw-whet owls out there and long-eared owls. And then spending just any time out in the woods, you might hear screech owls and barred owls and great horned owls at dusk. calling. So they can be hard to see. Usually I hear them before I see them, but the great horned owls, the barred owls, screech owls, they're scattered kind of all over the place. So there's different places you can go to see the owls. It's kind of a mixed bag. Duster says, thank you, Mark. Yeah, Mark sends in a lot of photos. Thank you very much, Mark. Ed is on, and he says, we're hearing the Carolina Wren's beautiful songs around the neighborhood a lot, but we're not seeing them at the feeders yet. They seem to come to the feeders more in the winter. Garter snakes are enjoying the sun and heat in the driveway. Have to watch for them when we drive out. All right. So, yeah, it's still warm enough to have some of the reptiles and amphibians out. They'll be going into hibernation soon, actually. But it's great to hear that you're still seeing some of those. And I'm right there with you with the Carolina Wren. I can hear them all the time, but I rarely see them. And if I see them, they're not at the feeder. They're just kind of hanging around in the trees. Stephanie's asking, is now the time to clean out birdhouses? Fantastic question. It is. Now is a perfect time to clean out birdhouses. You probably don't have anything nesting in them anymore. If you do, it might be some sparrows or something that are kind of rounding out the season, if you will. But yeah, now is a great time to clean out those houses. Once the young have fledged, so once they've left that house, you can always pull out the nesting material and clean it. And now is a perfect time to do that for the fall. You can always clean them out physically, clean out all the nest and all the debris and everything. And then there's different sprays you can use if it's sometimes they can be a little messy inside. We have some spray here it's all natural enzymes. That's what I use in mine. I just spray it down a little bit and it just breaks down some of those droppings or the other gunk that might be in the house. You can always use white vinegar is another thing, or bleach. If you use bleach, you want to make sure to dilute it and use a solution that is 1 part bleach to 9 or 10 parts water. You can spray that down, just let it air it out nice. And yeah, you'll be good for the next season. You'll be all ready for the spring. Let's see. Duster's got some comments here about the different birds. And she says, I actually saw owls in the Arizona desert in a cactus. Oh, very cool. Those might have been maybe Western screech owls. I'm not sure what other species you guys might have out there that are cavity nesters, but we have the Eastern screech owl here, and I'm guessing where you are, you probably have the Western. And Duster also says, I have a crow's nest that they use year after year. Yeah, owls really don't build their own nests. They tend to take over other birds' nests. So they're known to take over bald eagles. If it's a great horned owl, they can take over bald eagle's nest or red-tailed hawk's nest or crow's nests. So things like screech owls are cavity nesters and will go into cavities of trees or even birdhouses. If you have an owl box out, they'll use those. So really, really neat that Duster is seeing a crow's nest that they use year after year. So it looks like that is everybody's comments and questions. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Saturday. And until then, enjoy your week and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.